I'm going to record. Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to call the meeting of May 2nd, 2022 of the Community Preservation Committee to order. We do have a quorum. We actually have seven members, and we have a few guests here tonight. So as normal, we're going to have public participation, and we're going to have a discussion. This is a special meeting, so it's not going to follow our regular agenda. But we're going
I'm going to mute myself. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Tom, can you hear me too?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you, Doug.
I'm in two meetings at the same time. I'm trying to mute myself on the other one.
Okay. We're going to review the duties of our committee as listed in the ordinance, and then Steve Weisman from the Conservation Committee.
Can you still hear me? This may not work too well. Hold on a second, Tom.
Yep.
I'm going to mute my.
Okay, Doug, you're muted from on our side. So then we're going to review the schedule, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve Weisman from the Conservation Commission, who looked at the bylaw or at the ordinance and look what we're trying to come up with a game plan to get us back on track and get us to where we need to be, both short term and long term. And then right after that, we'll talk about our plan of action as to the things that we need to do in May and June. And then we're going to have a discussion on the in-person meeting, and it'll be just a discussion. What I want to say is we're not going to vote tonight, but we're going to have a vote at next week, and hopefully everyone can make that meeting next week. Then we'll have a quick report from the chair. Then instead of members' prerogatives, what I'd like to do is a discussion among the committee members to see what we should focus on for next week's agenda. I think that might be a good way of keeping us engaged, keeping us moving forward. So then we'll have approval of minutes and then adjournment. So going back up to the top, we'll have public participation is if there's some of our guests wish to speak, please raise your hand in the chat so I can see them, or the raise your hand is in the reactions at the bottom of your screen, and I will take them in the order that I have there. So is there any one of our guests that would like to say a few words? Okay. Hearing none. Let's move on to the first item, which is going over the duties of the committee. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go over, well, the first particular item here. This is pages from our ordinance that lists what our duties are. And I'm not going to go over that. I just wanted to leave that one for reference. But what I'd like to talk about is the second thing that I have, which is the color version, the duties of the background material 2. What I did here is I was able to copy that and put it into Word so I can manipulate it. And it was actually pretty enlightening to take a look and to see what we've done and what we haven't done, what we need to do, and moving forward to get us to the end of the fiscal year and move us forward to where we can start accepting applications. So what I did is I highlighted in red what our responsibilities are. And then I put in green is what we still need to do. Okay.
That hasn't opened yet.
It hasn't?
No.
Really, it says I'm sharing my screen.
Well, that document, your document 2 didn't open.
It didn't. Well, let's try again then. Do you see my cursor?
No.
Okay, hold on.
Now I see it.
Open now. Did that work?
It's got a little circle there, but it's not opening.
Did you click twice, Tom?
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
at it. I'm actually looking at it on my screen.
You are. Hmm.
Let's
No,
try. Let's
I
try
don't see it.
again. Did that
Oh,
open?
now that's good.
Okay. All right. Like I started to say, in red was what our duties are, and in green is things that we haven't done yet within inside our duties. Okay. And I came to the realization that we're really kind of, I won't say stuck, but we've been focusing on the first 4 items here, or actually the first 3 items that we're trying to develop our plan, which it was, but I think we've lost our focus a little bit on what needs to go into the plan. And I think Steve will be talking to this anyway, but one of the things that we've got, the documents that we've done already are fine. You know, I mean, they're a good document, but what's missing is priorities. What are our priorities? And if you look in the green in item 1 that I'm showing in green, it says we're supposed to go back to each one of the municipal boards to get
Tom,
their
I would
priority.
I would like to say something about that. We did go back to each of the boards at the very start of our organization, and we got all of their master plans. And I know Judy worked very closely with Parks and Rec to talk about their priorities. So we have done that.
Yes,
And
Shannon, I totally agree with you.
And
Yeah.
I take issue with the fact that we haven't really taken stock of our priorities, because I have spent 30 hours that I've accounted for and more that I haven't accounted for on that calendar, which was intended to give you a visual representation of the time in which we have to do things. And it includes a list of all of the things. And if you remember, at each of our meetings, I have asked for time on our agenda to talk about the things that we have to complete, which I did go through the list that you posted with the background material and compared it with the items on the agenda, and they sync up almost exactly. And I asked for everybody to prioritize that list. What is most important? What do we need to achieve, and by when? And every single meeting, we didn't achieve what everybody committed to achieving. So I take issue with that because we have done these things.
Well,
Well,
when I talk about priorities, hold on a second, Steve. When we talk about priorities, it's really the priorities of projects. What do you as the park commission, what are your priorities as far as what do you want to see? Do you want to see that Mary Dennison Park gets a new playground or something like that? What is your higher priorities? We don't have that in that document.
Tom, we most certainly
It's true.
did. Please,
Yeah.
Judy, please speak up. We absolutely did that.
Yeah,
and
Well,
Tom,
all of us
Shannon,
did so much
may
work.
I
Hold on.
speak?
No, I'm not finished. Would you all please let me finish?
Sure.
We absolutely did go to each of the commissions that are represented in the master plan. And the master plan is based on the templates of several other cities with guidance from the CPA coalition. We did all of this work. And if you remember, Judy, Liz, and I really hit the ground running, did a ton of work, a ton of research, and a ton of documentation. We've done this work. And if anybody thinks we haven't, I would like to have a separate word with you.
I don't think you have.
Okay.
Okay, Steve, we need to discuss that because we absolutely have.
Well, we need to discuss it now, Shannon.
Mm.
So go ahead, Judy. Sorry, go ahead. I'm done. That's what I needed to say.
Yes.
First
Judy.
of all, we have all these boards represented on our committee. So for us to have to leave our committee, the people representing those boards are capable of answering those questions. But the open space and recreation plan was done to the 9th degree. It's 110 pages. The city master plan is there. That information is there about goals and opportunities. And those are in our documents, goals, priorities, opportunities. So now my thought was that once that is done, they will see it, and then we can make, as we saw on the agenda, additions to it or changes to it. But I wrote my plan 7 months ago or 8 months ago, and we haven't gone any further. I dove into both of those, and they've been sitting there. So the problem is we haven't continued with the process with all 4 areas. We have to do that. Then they go to the boards, and as is written on this document, we incorporate items from the public forums or anywhere else. This is the first step of it. And I've been accused that my documents are too long. I've tried to put in as much as possible on goals and opportunities, priorities. I'm puzzled that that's the way this committee feels about this.
Well, I've read the documents, and the goals and needs are there. But I really don't think that the projects have been prioritized.
So Tom, let me ask you this. Why did we collect all of the master plans of the various commissions that are represented in the plan? And why did we spend so much time turning our wheels and trying to get people to do the work and read the documents? Because if that's the expectation, I can tell you that I am not going to contribute any more work until I see others do it.
Well, I think that's fine, Shannon, if you don't want to do any more work. But I think the dilemma we have here is that we are a really short time away from when we have to present this to the public, probably 4 to 6 weeks. And the document, the act, the ordinance, both require that we identify both short-term and long-term priorities for the program for the next year to give explicit direction to applicants about what sorts of activities we are willing to support. And we don't have that information yet.
So Steve, I appreciate your opinion, and I appreciate that you were on the study group 100%. And it's welcome information, welcome background. However, there are several of us on the committee that have been working our tails off to get us where we need to go. We have reviewed, hang on, Steve, we have reviewed the CPA Act. We have had the training with Stuart Saganor and the coalition. We have reviewed the ordinance, and we have brought it back on many occasions to the committee. And to basically be told that all of the work that we have worked so unbelievably hard on since July is basically not hitting the goal at all, that is incredibly disrespectful.
It's not disrespectful. It's a
No.
reality check, Shannon.
I appreciate that, Steve. It's not as disrespectful.
Okay, hold on. Liz, you had a question? I'll be back to you, Steve, in a second.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was having a little trouble with my mute and unmute. So I'm also puzzled by this idea that we have not captured priorities. We spent quite a bit of time in the criteria section of each of the parts of the CPP, and we really pushed ourselves to look at those and say, what's the criteria? What would help us define a better project or a project that's weaker, that needs a little more love put to it before it would be a priority? And that was things around ADA compliance. It was things around equity. It was things around what kind of open space. It was which side, how are we going to build this in a way that would make it easier for the parts of the city that have not had a chance at some of this kind of stuff before. So all of that to me is in the criteria for these sections, and why we push so hard to have that. We haven't gotten to a scoring matrix yet, which is frustrating, but we did do a lot of work around those criteria to help prioritize, to help people know when they're going to put in a project, how we are going to perceive it, how we are trying to craft this to be the best possible projects for the best possible impact in the city. So I'm a little puzzled by we haven't prioritized. You want to say we're not prioritizing the various tasks on our list?
No.
We're not good at that. Shannon's right. Every meeting,
it's
we sit
not-
there and
it's-
say,
we're
"Well, we
not
get it done,"
saying-
we're not getting it done.
We're not talking about the priorities of the committee. We're talking about the current priorities of each of these boards, looking at the next 2 fiscal years.
Right.
So
And
that's out of their plans that they gave us. Some of them had 1-year plans, some of them had 5-year forward plans. And
Yeah,
they
but-
had stuff in them about what was their priorities in there and their criteria for what was important to them.
So what you
That's
need to
what
do,
Susan had put in
what's missing now, as we're about to go out and meet the public, is to go back to those committees and either get formal affirmation that we've captured all their priorities, short-term for the next 2 years and longer term for the following 3 years. And if not, to have you give that input. I can tell you that the Conservation Commission has not done that yet.
Right.
Well, feel
Regardless-
free, as their
regardless of-
representative, feel free to bring that, but we've had representatives here from all these boards.
It's not supposed to be, you need to go to them. That's
That's what I was just going to say. If you take a look what I have in green here, it says the committee shall consult, not just read their master plans, shall consult with the municipal boards, including Conservation, Historic, Planning Board, Park Commissioners, and the Housing Authority, or persons acting in there, in conducting such studies. So, in other words, the way I read it is, we've done our report. I'll call it a report right now, which gives into the history, which gives us the goals and opportunities within the realm of their particular specialty. But there's no projects A, B, and C that are listed that as next year going forward. We would like projects A, D, and F, or whatever, as our top projects, so that when people read it, they get the opportunity. Oh, yeah, that's a
Oh,
good.
Mike, I
that's a
see
good
he's buying
project.
whatever Steve
But-
says now.
But we're not meeting our responsibility unless we meet with the boards and hear what they have to say. That's the way I read it.
Can I
Could I
ask you a question?
speak,
Can I
Shannon, after
question?
you?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So, all of the work that we've done so far, and it's not an insignificant amount of work, I want to hear from somebody that all of that work has not been contributing to helping us meet that goal of getting the priorities from the various commissions. And then I have a second question to that. So first of all of the work, the many hours that Judy and Liz and I have spent putting documents and establishing the groundwork for this committee, are you saying that has not been a worthwhile contribution to the CPC?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I think the work that everyone has done, Shannon, Judy, and Liz in particular, and Fred, as well as myself, there's a lot of work done, and it's really good.
So that feels a lot like a participation trophy. So I am hearing that we have not met with the individual commissions, but
Shannon, why can't we see you?
Hold on,
hang
Steve.
on, because my camera is not working.
Oh,
My camera
okay.
is not working. And there have been plenty of people not on camera. You have not asked Doug why he's not on camera. So why have we not met those goals? We are representative of the various commissions that the CPA says that we have to have represented. So why do we have to go back and talk to Parks? If I am here from Parks and Rec,
Yes.
why do we have to go back and talk to housing if Steve Starr was here to represent housing? Why do we have to go back to the Historic Commission if Fred is here to represent the Historic Commission? And we also got their master plans. I worked my tail off. They were not all easy. A lot of them weren't online. I know for housing, Steve had to go dig around and we had to chase down a couple of people to get the housing plan.
Yeah.
So we have all that information. We got that information. It's a waste of the commission's time to go back to those parties, those commissions. Those Parks and Rec is not a commission, but I am part of the Parks and Rec Commission. So it's a waste of those city professionals' time to go back and ask them questions about what they've already provided us.
No, you're absolutely correct. But looking at what we're charged to do, Shannon, have you been an item on the parks agenda in one of your commission meetings?
Yes, every single meeting.
To discuss this?
No, because we haven't had anything to discuss.
Well, that's the point. How can you set up your priorities, the committee's
From
immediate?
the documents.
Their
No,
master
but the
plan is their
documents are not
priority.
current, Judy. They're not current. You're going to use the same
For your
documents next
information,
year?
Steve, I am very involved with conservation, with the administration of it, with Rob MacArthur. I have had many conversations and exchanges with him about what goes on in conservation. In fact, on Sunday, we met at Lake Washagum. I am very informed of what is needed. I'm also very informed of what's needed in recreation, in open space. I talk to all the people with the trails projects. I'm with DEP on what's going on. So it really is very insulting, the tone of what is going on here. And by the way, we brought a report to the committee and half of the committee never had a single comment. We have been shouldering the burden of this. There are 3 or 4 people who have done nothing. So if you want to talk to somebody, maybe you have to talk to the people who haven't participated. Maybe they have to resign from the positions so people who are willing to do the work will get on. But what you have been saying today, particularly about Shannon and Liz's work, is very insulting. It is not the right approach. You could have said, okay, how about we go to them? No, you say you haven't done it. Yours is a negative response to the work that we have done, and it is really insulting. So talk to the other people in the committee. Where are they tonight? Where are the people from the other boards? Why aren't they speaking? And maybe that'll give you an idea of how frustrating this has been for us who have worked harder than you can imagine.
Well, I know this is tough, and it was not mentioned to be an insult. It
So
was not intended to be an insult. What the intention is to get us moving forward and get us to complete our work in a short time frame.
Tom,
That was,
it is an insult. It doesn't matter what it was intended at.
Yeah,
It
that's
is
how we
very
feel.
insulting. And when everybody that has been doing the lion's share of the work on this committee, and so help me if anybody challenges me on that, anybody who's been doing the lion's share of the work on here is deeply insulted, and we need to take a level set because this committee has been nothing but disrespectful since day one.
well,
There's a comment on the chat that you
Shannon,
might
I
want to
do-
pay attention to,
I mean-
Steve.
Pardon me?
There's a comment on chat that is the way that it's feeling right now.
Well, can
From
you read
Mike.
it to, can you
It
read it
says,
to
I
me?
feel a bit of misogyny in this room. Check yourselves.
Well, I do feel like I'm being picked on as a man, so
Whoa, really?
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Liz, you have a
So,
question.
we have struggled as a committee consistently to get the work done on the CPP. And the goal was to have a draft of that CPP that, while it may not be perfect, it was really solid, and we felt we could display it to the public and be ready for our open forum. And I fully expected that when that happened, sure, other boards
Yeah.
might send their people that couldn't come to this meeting. I expected there would be more people from those boards and everything that would give us their feedback then. And if we'd gotten it wrong, we'd hear it. But I don't know. I feel like another cycle of hiking back to them when you're so stressed about time frame anyway. We still can't seem to finish our document. It's been our quote priority for probably 6 months, but we get distracted by other things like, let's drop everything and get a phone number. Let's drop everything and let's talk about FAQ. Let's drop, I mean, we have gotten distracted by things that were nice to have, but not necessarily as critical as getting the CPP done. And we're still not there yet. And we couldn't even agree on a template. So we ended up with 4 very separate, different looking pieces that now require the extra work of being blended to a final consistent looking document. So I thought if we just could get the CPP done, we would go a long way towards getting those last bits of, oh my goodness, we missed X, or oh my goodness, I can see from the feedback in the forum and the feedback in the public that we're going to get for people that weren't at the forum, but listen to the recording later. We need to reshuffle perhaps the criteria, perhaps the ordering of the projects that these boards gave us that they wanted. So I'm mystified why anyone thinks that we're not capturing that, or we're not planning to adjust to that when we get the feedback. So,
Well,
So I'll say it again. So I'm coming to this fresh. I'm looking at all the documents that have been created. I have a very strong personal commitment to the success of this effort and to the success of this committee. I look at our duties. I look at the tasks we have to do within specific timelines, all the decisions that need to get made, the documents that need to be created. And my feeling is that unless we redirect our efforts, we're not going to get there. And now, if my perception is inaccurate as someone who's kind of looking at this from the outside, I'm happy to step back and let one of you who wants to take a leading role and get us to the point by the end of June where we're prepared to go out into the community and start soliciting applications. But I don't think you've got the pieces in place. And with the 4 meetings that are left between now and June, I don't see how you're going to get there. Can someone
I'm gonna-
explain to me how that's going to happen?
Sorry.
Liz,
Well, I think you're coming to the table with something that the committee has discussed multiple times, this idea that we're opening for grant applications on July 1. And we have always said that's probably a far reach for us. And we have been backed up by that from, the coalition saying that's a big reach to try and set yourselves up with a whole new process and everything you have to have and do your community outreach and be ready to go in a year. That's extremely rare.
Good news.
And they
Yeah.
don't have good examples of that. So we never expected, after much discussion, we expected to meet our marks of opening for public public feedback. And we expected to have our first budget to get our accounts squared away. But we never expected to open the process to accept grants July 1. We never said that was our goal. So maybe you're coming to the table with this expectation.
I think I'm coming to the table with very reasonable expectation,
Right.
given what the ordinance says you have to do for February 1st of 2023.
So I want to throw out there that we recognized that getting to a midsummer date for being able to get through like applications and the whole analysis and review process would be a pretty big push. And as we got later into the year in 2021, we recognized, I know especially Liz and I recognized, hey, this is not going to happen. We don't have a clear project plan. We don't have clear deliverables. We don't have clear deliverable deadlines. So the solution we came up with, for good or for not, was to, somebody's not muted. So for good or for not, we came up with a calendar, and I am always open to better solutions. I am not the only one with a good idea, but we brought this calendar to the committee. Nobody said anything about, no, hey, you know what, this isn't going to work for us. I think we need something different. We went over this calendar at each committee meeting for the past several months. And I think that's Doug. Can someone mute him? I don't have the ability to do it. That we went over this calendar for the past several months. I think we did it before Christmas. So we started doing it in January. And that calendar is a visual representation of the dates, the months and days of the year that will ultimately get us through the end of this year, And we spent the last meeting, not the last one that was canceled, obviously, but the one before that, backing up from when we want to get applications over to city council. So we backed up into that based on the things that we knew we had to get done by law and by the ordinance. And we backed up into that and we realized, hey, this is going to be huge. In fact, according to what we decided as a committee at the last meeting, we were going to start having our public forums at the end of this month. And that's a pretty big push because we have to get this plan in a state where we all feel good about putting it out to the public to get their feedback. And we have to schedule a room if we're going to do it in person. We have to schedule a Zoom if we're going to do it online. And we have to make all the materials available. We have to do PR. We have to do a bunch of stuff to get stuff ready. And we all have to agree that those are the things. We operate as a committee, not as a single entity saying what should go and what shouldn't. And we did that at the last meeting. Everybody has always understood that to get to a mid-June 2022 date would be a huge ask. And as we've already stated several times, there are 3, sometimes 4 people doing the lion's share of the work. And it has been nothing but bullying and arguing, and we're getting nothing but pushback. And this is like submitting to our own abuse at this point, because all we do when we bring issues or questions or ask people to, heaven forbid, read a document before it's presented, we get nothing but arguments. And it's not achieving the goal. It's not something that one person can do. That's why we have a committee of people to do it. And we need to work as a team. And we tried to get there. I know Liz and I have talked quite a bit about how to best get there. How can we best work as a team? And it's just been darn near impossible. Not darn near, it's been impossible. And it's infuriating to get that feedback from anybody saying, hey, you know what? I'm not okay with what you're doing, or, you know what, it's just not enough. It's not good enough. You haven't done what you should do. That kind of thing. It's so frustrating, but the entire committee has been painfully aware of the dates and deliverables that are required to meet by law and by the city ordinance to get to any date, not just like a June date, to get to any date. And like Liz said, it doesn't matter what you think, but the CPA, the coalition, and every CPC that we've talked to so far has said, hey, you want to do this in a year? That's kind of insane. So, and that's like with a well-oiled machine, and we are anything but a well-oiled machine. So I just want to leave it there that I put together this calendar with Liz's help, and I put together all the deliverables, which actually I went through the list where it was in the background materials. Everything on the background materials is in the calendar that we did, which is clearly not being used by anybody. So I'm going to stop putting any effort into that. But that's kind of the lay of the land. Like it, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's been the reality. And you can't say you're new on the block because you've been to a lot of our meetings. So I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to that leads us, it's a good segue into the next section, which is the review of the schedule. Now, at the first meeting in April is when we backed up from February 1st, which was our deadline. And to just get us thinking that way. Well, and I appreciate what Steve had put together as far as trying to get us where we need to be by the end of the fiscal year. Okay. Steve, do you want the screen, or can you?
Well, you can put it up there if you want to, because you have it. But I think you're being much too conservative in your estimation of what this committee can get done over the next 6 months. I'm not really clear why you're taking such a conservative perspective on that. I think the key to success is to look at the tasks, look at the dates. If the work that's been done needs to be reconfigured to get it into form that it's usable, then that's what we need to do. And it might require meeting more often. It might require having subgroups, but I think it's doable. And what I tried to do is to put together an outline, not a calendar, an outline of benchmarks that we would need to meet to get to the February goal line that the city council has set for us. And which I think the city expects of us.
Okay.
Fred, what's your thought about this? You've been silent, as you often are.
Well, let's see if I can get my mic working. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I have a feeling, I'm thinking now, I'm focusing in on this issue of being in touch with our committees that we represent, the 5 of us that represent constituencies. I have a feeling that we've all been back to those committees. We should have been. Certainly that was part of our targets. And I think we've incorporated probably all of the input that we had from those committees into our needs, goals, and opportunities in our various sections of the plan that we've all written. So I think that part of it has been done. We should be able to just pluck those things out of those documents that we've written.
So
Okay.
that makes it very easy, if that information is there, to distill that information and come up with the short-term project priorities and the long-term priorities.
And they may not be all inclusive, but they are certainly a representative group of needs, goals, and opportunities that our committees that we represent have talked about and have identified as needs, goals, and opportunities.
Okay. Yes. People still have hands up. Do they still wish
Yeah.
to speak?
Yes, Tom, I wish to
because-
speak.
Sure. If you've completed what you want to say, please take your hand down so that we don't
Mhm.
get that again. Okay, Judy.
Of course, I'm agreeing with what Fred is saying about our committees. That's the way this was set up. People who are connected to these committees, who know what's going on in our city. And I don't think we have to feel we're kept to the letter of the law, that we have to have short-term and we have to have long-term. I don't even know that the committees know that. It depends. First of all, it's the public who's going to come and apply. So we can't say, oh, you're in the short-term goal, you're not in the long-term goal. So I think we're caught on something we don't need to be caught on. We just need to know what the goals and the needs are, and we've done that work. And so I think the problem here is the first thing we talked about was a criticism of four of us who have done extensive work providing the CPP. And that's the wrong way to go about trying to help here. If you want to help, let's look at the things that are not done and start working on those things. You know, we have that application, but we have to now put it together. How can you help? I don't think the city council is going to criticize us if we don't have everything done perfectly at this point, because as Liz and Shannon have been saying, it's a huge job and nobody really thinks that you can get this done so quickly unless you want to do it in a very lax way and come out with a poor plan. And we don't want that. We want the best possible plan.
Understood.
That's all. And I'll lower
Okay.
my hand.
Okay, Liz.
I want to make sure, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
So
Uh-oh.
I would say that
Chances.
one, we have tried to have working groups to work on particular sections or tasks or areas of what we needed to work on. That's had mixed results.
Shannon
right?
said she can hear me talking to you.
So, hey, Judy, we can hear you. Did you?
You can.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't
I
know.
just saw that.
Okay. So we have tried working groups. We still have a couple of working groups, but they don't always yield the results you might think. We have had designated tasks for quite some time, and some of them get done promptly and some don't, and some surprisingly require more work than we would have expected, right? So you just don't know on that. And last, I would say this idea of reconfiguring it, we've spent a long time in the committee making sure that the wordings that we're using there are as clear as we can make them, are as comprehensive to make sure they're inclusive enough and make sure that it reads as inclusive. So, I mean, you may think that the word or style of what we've written doesn't suit you, or you don't believe it's going to be good for the public, and maybe we've gotten it wrong. But all of that wording has gone through the committee with lots of discussion about, would that be understood? Would that do the job? Would that cover what it needs to cover? Right? So it's not like we haven't tried to get that done. It just takes a while to go through that and come up with even the criteria that we've listed, that went through multiple reviews, multiple discussions to come up with where we are. So, I mean, you're listing out like steps like we haven't done them. We have done them. We need to continue to do them. I mean, maybe if we're not getting our tasks done, we're going to have to keep putting them on the list to get them done. But whether they're on the calendar or they're on a one-page sheet with a task list, neither one gets them done if people haven't signed up to do them or they require more work than they got.
Right. And really that the whole purpose of the plan of action was to get more people involved on the committee side.
Hey, Tom, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So because I did put together that calendar with all of the things that are on the plan of action document, how is the plan of action document going to help us achieve those goals better than the other method? And I am cool to go with a better method if there is one, but it's a little bit insulting to just be presented with that when saying, hey, you know what you did was nice and all, but we're going to do something different.
Well, no, I mean, like I said before, I think the calendar is great, and you've done a lot of work on it. I appreciate it, but like I said, I'm not sure everyone actually looked at it after between meetings.
That's even more insulting if people aren't reading it, because we made it as easy as possible to read with pretty pictures and a list that's highlighted in yellow. So I'm not exactly sure if folks didn't read what we put together, why they would read something else that says the exact same thing.
Well, I was just trying to get more people involved. That was the only reason that I put it together. So it was not an affront to you whatsoever as far as your work on the calendar. Believe me.
Well, it's nice. It's nice to be appreciated for that, but it doesn't feel like an appreciation when you're saying that, well, we just want to get people involved. So it's great to hear you appreciate it, but you're saying that and then your actions mean something different. And when we've done so much work, if we hadn't done so much work and gotten beaten down at every turn, it wouldn't be as contentious. But we all want a good result here, but it definitely, to go back to the comment in the chat, it does feel quite a bit like misogyny. And if the only people saying it doesn't feel like misogyny are the men in the room, if they all point in fact, you kind of are proving my point, but if the men in the room are the only ones saying, hey, it's not really misogyny, or I feel insulted as a man, or whatever it is, then that's misogyny. Check yourself.
Shannon,
hold on.
That's cheap. It's really cheap.
Steve, please, please let Shannon finish, and then you'll have your turn. All right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it is, I mean, I think it's more important to say, it was less important to say your work is appreciated. It's more important to appreciate the work. And they are different. And if you don't understand how they're different, we can talk about that. But it is very different. And we have done a ton of work. Like Liz said, we have gone through the requirements of the CPA law. We have gone through the requirements of the CPC ordinance that was passed by the city. Liz and I had special meetings with folks who were on the study group to go through all of the artifacts before we became members to make sure we understood the scope and requirements and expectations of the CPC. And we understood it would be a heavy lift, but Liz and I are both very process oriented. We're very goal oriented. It's very frustrating to consistently not meet deadlines and then find out that, hey, the men in the room are all saying, well, we have to be done by June. And what you're doing is not meeting the expectations, my expectations. So even if you are not one of the men saying, this is my expectation, by not speaking up, you are implicitly saying that. And if you don't understand that, we need to have another conversation.
Oh, yep,
Oh.
let's have that conversation too. So, so the feeling I'm getting from the group is that everybody thinks we're doing great and we're on schedule. Is that the case?
That is 110,000% not the case. We, as a committee, are doing an atrocious job of meeting our goals, of one, setting goals and meeting those goals. Getting people to commit to setting goals is darn near impossible. And to get people to meet deadlines is even more unbelievably frustrating. We haven't met a single deadline since we started.
So I know this is really hard for everybody, and I know you really feel like you're being picked on, and that is not my intent.
Well,
My
intent
intent-
doesn't much matter.
My intent is to try to collaboratively agree on a set of things that we want to try to get done in May and June and figure out how to do them.
Have fun with that. The workhorses in the group are kind of done.
Well, I'm willing to be a workhorse. I've already put together this list. I am willing to take on the plan. I think it's doable within this time frame. Would that make you happy?
Nope.
Okay.
And if you don't understand why, that is a much longer conversation, and I think everybody's done hearing it.
Why don't we talk about the budget? Can we talk about the budget?
Sure.
Sure, let's talk
Tom,
about budget.
my hand has been up for some time. I would like to discuss what we're talking about.
Okay, Judy.
I think I understand what you said, that the plan of action was to get other people involved, but it hasn't worked before. What has to happen is the people who are not doing any work have to be spoken to directly. And if they're here, they're hearing us. And if they don't want to do the work and they don't be on a committee, they need to be replaced. That should have happened a long time ago. It's been clear from the beginning. If we had a team working together, we could make more progress. So the frustration is that we do this work, we get no responses. We meet, time after time presenting it. Okay, another draft, but we're just making our own corrections. Nobody's helping us. So let's look at the people who are not doing any work, and please, Fred is not in that group. Fred has been extremely helpful and a true gentleman about everything. So the people who are doing no work should leave. Let the committees know they need to replace them. They need someone else. Some of them don't have the time. We can understand if you don't have the time, but give the position to someone else if you don't. So that's what I think we have to do, not make a list and hope someone's going to sign up for it. I looked at the list and I could easily think who would check each box, and it would be the same people. So if you want the other people to be involved, they have to be spoken to directly. If they don't want to do the work, they have to be replaced.
Yeah. Okay. All right. One last, Liz, you had your hand up.
So I don't particularly object to the task list, whether it's in a calendar form or it's on a task list. That's not the issue. The issue is this: get more people engaged to participate. And I didn't see anything in these that helps do that. So that's been the challenge all along. I mean, you could skywrite the list every day. It's not going to get people necessarily to do the work. At the same time, this is supposed to be a collaborative body where we work together to come up with the best that we can together that we think is going to work for the city. So for me, it's a little difficult. It sort of feels, Steve, a little bit like, oh, there's a new boss who's taken over the division, and he has the answers and he has his style and he has his method. So, you'll take it over and you'll get it done. Well, that could work. If other people don't want to do work and you want to dive in and take it over, so to speak, I'm sure that could happen. It's not necessarily the same as a collaborative effort if you just come in and step forward. I understand it's a mixed message. On the one hand, you're trying to step up to help, to participate, to make a difference, to help us get us over the line. But, you know, maybe it's just a style thing. It just sounds a lot like, give it to me, I'll get it done. You people didn't get it done. So maybe that's not how you intend to come across, but it feels a little bit like that. So I don't really object to methodologies. I just am looking for the ways that the methodologies are going to improve how we're getting it done now. Because as Shannon said, we struggle with people making their commitments, with us staying on the priorities we say we're going to stay on, us finishing the stuff that we begin. You know, it's happened from the beginning. So, you know, that's the challenge that we have. And, you know, I want to, you know, working all together to kind of share ideas and stuff. It doesn't always work out, and we don't always work collaboratively. If you want to come in and rip something out of somebody's hand, grab it and run and do it. You know, I mistakenly worked on something that I thought I was supposed to do more comprehensive on, and that didn't work out well. As some people can mention, that felt like I ripped it out of someone's hands, which was not my intent, because I made a misstep. So that led to some dysfunction in the group. And when you have that, you lose even more time. Right. As people try to, you're not getting done when you want to get done tonight, Tom, because we're having angst about how this is coming across, right? So that's less productive because we're not necessarily working as a collaborative team. How do you fix that? How do you get that? How do you get people to want to spend their time on this, as opposed to, I'll check in when there's applications. I'm here to read applications when they show up. I mean, we have some of that. So I would say it could just be a style thing. I mean, I've had that myself, where sometimes I'm perceived as a little bit pushy on committees, and I'm trying not to be that way on this one, but it just does sort of feel like, oh, the new boss arrived. You know, if we don't want to do it his way, then he'll just take it off our hands and he'll get it done his way. So I would hope that's not what's going to happen, and that it will be more of a collaborative effort, but that's just my sense of it.
Okay.
Shannon,
Shannon, your hand was up. Was that intentional?
Yeah.
Or?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Go ahead,
so,
and then I'll give it to Doug.
Okay. So some history, because I see some folks who haven't been here before, that when we very first started, like Liz said, we started with some working groups. And a couple of us, you know what, I'm not going to mince words. It was Judy, me, Liz, and Tom signed up for these working groups, and we hit the ground running with the working groups. We came up with some solid rules that nobody follows, and we came up with Judy worked her tail off on the open space and recreation part of the master plan. And I know Liz and TJ, and I think Judy also worked their tails off on the application and the pre-qualification process. So there were a couple people who really hit the ground running. And there were some folks who were just, you know, not really as deeply enthusiastic about getting into it. And that happened, but it never changed. So that became deeply frustrating, because when we bring deliverables back and we try to set expectations, it was not well received. And when I say not well received, I'm putting a kind spin on it. We've all been kind of, and again, this is a men versus women thing. A lot of the women were a step away from verbally abused and I know a lot of the men are going to be like, no, we didn't abuse. But, you know, when you say, no, I don't like it, you're pushing too much, you have too much information, why don't we just use somebody else's? And we've heard countless different reasons that what we're doing isn't the right way of doing things, or we're asking for too much input. And that just happens as part of a committee. There's going to be people with different strengths, but it's super duper frustrating to walk into a meeting, especially a meeting like this. This one's more contentious than any of the others we've had, But to walk into a meeting like this and then have somebody say, well, we've got to do this, 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 and this. And then we'll say, well, we have done this, this, and this, and this. And then we're told, no, well, you know what you did wasn't right. And to hear, well, I appreciate the work you're doing. Well, that's awesome. But it doesn't mean a hill of beans if you don't actually appreciate the work being done. So we have pushed for a project, something like a project plan, which a lot of folks might not have ever worked in a project environment to have like a formal project methodology. Totally cool. But basically, you're going to set your deliverables. You're going to set a date by which they need to be done. You're going to set the different resources that you need, the human resources, the hard resources, that kind of thing. And we just never got there because we were always trying to just get some work done. So that is super frustrating and irritating. And it has taken every ounce of willpower for myself, and I know several others, to really maintain calm. And this is the furthest I've gotten from not maintaining calm. So apologies if I've gotten too hot. But things need to change. That's clear, because if they don't, I guarantee you the people who are doing the most work here will no longer continue to do the most work here. And that's awesome. If one or two people want to take it on, it's a lot of work to do. This CPC can be amazing for the city. It has so much potential, and we all want to see it succeed. But we are the inaugural team. We're here to set the foundation for its continued success into the future. So just getting to June and approving a bunch of projects, that's awesome, but it doesn't guarantee that the CPC is successful into the future. We really need to establish really good foundational practices and documents before we get to approving projects. And that's been the fight that we have been having since day one.
Okay. All right, thanks. Doug, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was absent for the beginning of the meeting. I was listening, but I was involved in the Ag Commission meeting, so I didn't hear all of the nuance, but I heard what the last 5 or 10 minutes have been. I heard a little of what Steve said when he started. I've been listening to Shannon. I am not offended by the suggestion because I've been very vocal here and elsewhere about what we're doing and what we aren't doing. And I am only one member of the committee, but I've said to Tom on any number of occasions that I didn't feel like I was a good fit here, and perhaps I should move on or come back again when there is something that I believe I have the ability to participate in. I do not have the ability, time-wise or otherwise, to do the work that Shannon has done and Judy has done. They're fabulous. I think sometimes there's a little too much focus on process rather than where are we going to go. I do think that there's been a lot of time spent on doing stuff that we didn't have to do. That's just my own read on it. In talking to people from other groups, there obviously is not agreement on that here. I think it would be great if we were collaborative, and I don't see that happening. I don't hear it happening. I think that we have drawn some lines in the sand here, and I think there's some criticism that's aimed, whether fairly or unfairly, at members of the group. This ought not to be about personalities. This ought to be about getting the job done. I'm not able, nor am I good, even if I was able time-wise, to do the things that have been done by Judy and Shannon and Liz. And I frankly find that it is, my honest opinion is that we have spent way too much time on form and a lot of personality stuff and, wanting to be acknowledged, et cetera. I think that's all swell. Whether you think that I was being rude to you early on when I said I thought that a lot of the things we were doing were kind of a waste of time, that is still my feeling. And I think that was, I don't know exactly what was in Tom's head when he wanted us to straighten out what's going on. But I think a lot of the time, maybe because we all didn't agree on what needed to be done. And I kind of, after that first altercation, after I said what I wanted to, I felt very much browbeaten back by some of the comments so I just kind of kept my mouth shut. But again, then we're down to personalities again, which is also a waste of time. So I think we are, as Tom has suggested, way behind. I don't think I'm contributing anything other than the occasional trying to bring us back around to the focal point, which is getting us to July 1st and being able to take applications. And so whether I decide I want not to be a participant in this anymore, because I, A, don't want to create problems, and B, I sure don't want to listen to somebody taking shots at me. So it's not necessary. I'm not thin-skinned, but I also don't want to give my time and have somebody say that, you know, you're not doing things the way we want you to do them. So I didn't hear all of what Steve said at the beginning, as I said before, but I will tell you that we are a long ways off, and we get onto the minutia of things. And I hear Shannon, she says, we got to get it right for the future, but the future is like the future. We're now into a situation where people have expectations because they're paying into a fund and they want results as of the 1st of July. Whether we give them results that they all like remains to be seen, but you're going to have to give them something more than what we've got now, and what, you know, hopefully we can create a lot more in the next couple of months. But continue to be stuck on all of the minutia, I think is not going to be productive. So I've said my piece.
Okay. If I could just chime in, you know, we as a committee came in with nothing. When we were all appointed and we finally met, we had nothing outside of the coalition, which is a great resource. We started reading all the different plans, but we were starting from ground zero. Okay. And we've been working diligently. I mean, if you take a look at the ordinance says we shall have at least, I think it's 6 meetings per year, I think it is. And by God, we've been meeting twice a month for 9-10 months now, with the exception of the holidays, which is always difficult. But for the most part, we've met every twice a month to get this done, and there's been a lot of work, and a lot of work by a lot of members of this committee. It's not so much work by other members of the committee, but we're looking. I was looking at the ordinance and looking where we need to be in FY23, and came to the realization that we're not even close to getting something ready to put out to the general public yet. And I welcome, with Steve's background, his professional background, as well as his work on the study group. I thought it was great that he offered to review it, trying to get up to speed on what the committee has done. And he also came to the realization that we're a long way from the finish line to get this thing done. So I welcomed it was a fresh look, another pair of eyes. It was not intended to be any kind of affront to any one of us, any one of the people that have been doing the work. It's just where we need to be. So that's where I'm coming from. And plus, I was trying to get more people involved so that we can get to the finish line. So I know Shannon has raised her hand.
Oh, are you calling? Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 things. One, if somebody feels a certain way, say in this very example, I feel insulted. I feel like my work has not been valued. I feel whatever it is, and you say, well, that wasn't my intention. That is a backhanded apology. That is us saying, I'm sorry you feel that way. That is not an okay response. An okay response, and this is interpersonal communication here, is I am sorry that I did the things that caused you to feel that way. Let's figure out how to do it differently. So that's point number one. Point number two, I want to understand, given the discussion that we've had here tonight, how the problem of getting everybody engaged, not just 2, 3, 4 people, everybody, how are we going to get everybody engaged? And how are we going to get everybody engaged in a way that helps us meet this deadline of June for these applications? And like it or not, whatever your belief is, getting these applications in and getting the whole CPC stood up in a year is a Herculean task. And it doesn't matter what you think, what you believe. We have talked to other CPCs, we have talked to the CPA Coalition, and they have informed us of this, and we are starting to understand why. So I want to understand engagement, how we're going to get people engaged, and how we're going to get people engaged in a way that gets them to be accountable for deliverables that are going to get us to this date that you want to accept applications.
All right, so can I say one more thing, Tom?
Go ahead, Doug.
This will be considered extraordinarily insensitive by some. I think that if you have a problem, you don't know what my intentions are in saying things that I say or other people. I think that when you have a problem like that and you're looking for an apology, I think you have to look within and not look without. I don't, a lot of people say things. What I do for a living finds a lot of people upset with me and offended. And if I got upset with everybody who said something about me or said something about what I'd said, I wouldn't have been successful with what I'm doing. Maybe we all have a level of thick our skin.
Unfortunately, Doug, this is nothing I'm going to agree with you on, because someone called that victim blaming, and that is also not okay.
Well, that's a lot of jargon.
All right.
Shannon.
Okay,
And we're
all right, okay.
Anything done.
No. All right, but I think we got to really move on and start moving on to see what we can do. Steve.
So with everybody's agreement, I think we should try to be very tasky about this and think about what we need to put together a plan in some fashion and bring it together to the next meeting in a distilled form so we can look at it together and say, okay, there's enough here. We vote on it, we sign off on it, and then it's ready to use. It seems like from what I'm hearing, there's been a somewhat interminable process that's gone on, very iterative, without any deadlines. So my suggestion is that we try to set some deadlines for ourselves and try to live with them. Is the group comfortable with that?
You mean
Deadline.
like we've done before and nobody's met?
Well, I don't care about what happened before. I'm
I was
talking
gonna-
about, are we comfortable going forward?
Sure, let's do it again. It's not really any different than what we're doing, but it's why we keep doing it, to keep advancing the pieces.
That's what we have to
Right.
do, is we have to keep advancing.
No different than what we do in any meeting. We set the things
Right.
out, we look at our priorities again, we say, oh my God, we're behind, we need to get these pieces done.
Right.
And
So
it is difficult to get people to vote on certain things. No, it needs to be whatever. One more time.
Tom,
So
could you
Liz-
change the screen so we can see each other instead of seeing the documents? It'll be more of a meeting that way. Right
That's
now we
good.
see the,
Okay.
okay, there we are.
hi
All
there.
right. Okay, now we're there.
Okay.
Okay, so
Oh.
is the group open to some suggestions? I'm not trying, Liz, I'm not trying to be the guy who takes over.
I'm not disagreeing. I mean, what you're saying is, sure, task list, fine.
So here-
Deadlines, sure.
so-
Voting stuff, great. I mean, this is no different than what we've attempted to do in the meeting.
Right, so
I think,
here's what I would
you
suggest.
know,
And this is just a suggestion, which, again, I'm going back to what's required of us by the ordinance, and the things that are in the ordinance were more or less taken from the act. So I think they have some validity. And Judy, you say that we don't need to do the long-term and the short-term stuff, but I actually think we do need to do the long-term and the short-term stuff. So would it be possible with each of the 4 categories to put together a short list of long-term and short-term priorities that we could bring to the next meeting and share among us? Not the report.
no, just pull out the page that has the criteria and the opportunities and you're done.
Right.
Oh, sure. One more document, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you feel comfortable and you think we need that,
I think
Well,
that's doable.
I think we do need that.
I think that's doable.
we also need the CPP done.
Well, I think we need to have a discussion about what the CPP is, because our CPP is awfully big.
Our CPP is shorter than most CPPs.
No, it isn't.
No, they're all varying.
Absolutely not, Shannon. It is not.
Oh my God, I've spent at least 30 hours working on just the CPP. So I've researched other CPPs, and ours is absolutely as short as most of them and shorter than some.
So
I would say we're probably in the middle.
Have you looked at others?
yeah, I've looked at others.
Steve, what's the problem with it being long? Could you explain that?
So I'm trying to think about, and I've been thinking about this for a while as I've been attending the meetings, and I have to say it's really hard to sit through the meetings, much like it would be hard for anyone to sit through this meeting and not be a participant. When I was in the outside and I was listening to the meetings and listening to the back and forth, it was really difficult. It was like bad television, if you know what I mean. I couldn't get into it. But my sense of what the plan should be is a combination call to action, sales document, and how to do it guide, and less a recapitulation of all those master plans that already are out there.
So Steve, you think that people are going to read this document and they're going to go then and look at the master plan too?
No, I don't think they're going to, I don't
So
think they're
in
going to
other
look at
words-
this. Nobody looks at the master plans.
Right. So the
We know
master
that.
plans to you are not
Well,
very
yeah.
important, but you're telling us that we should know what these different committees want, and that's what's in those master plans. So if somebody is applying and is not very knowledgeable about this city, and those are the people I'm concerned about, I feel there should be a lot in our documentation to give them ideas of what is possible. There's a lot of people who know exactly what they want already. They're ready to go. I'm concerned about the people who don't know very much about what we have and what we don't have. And that's been my goal, to get them the information. They can skim through it. They can look at the sections they can want, but it's going to give them a guide because they are not going to read the master plans.
Right.
I
I
don't
agree. I agree.
And I don't believe they're going to read a long document here either.
No.
Well,
So
then I
the
don't think
point-
they're very interested in
point
applying.
is-
Hold on. One
If
person
they're
at a time,
interested
please.
in applying, they should read the document. If they're not very interested, how committed are they to the subject at hand? I
don't
think
think
that's the
that's right.
minimum you should do when you want hundreds of thousands of dollars from a fund. It should
But
be
what
there
if
for
they only,
them.
what if they only want $10,000 from the fund? How many pages should they have to
So-
read?
Oh,
Hold on,
Nobody
Steve,
is
come
going
Oh,
Hold on,
to
hold
really?
on.
Well, that's the
Hold on,
point,
That's
please.
Judy.
ridiculous,
Steve.
It's not about the amount of money.
Hold on,
I-
please.
Can I
Please.
please? Step? Yeah. So nobody is going to read the entire document, period. If they are interested in a project to put a park in somewhere, they're going to read the open spaces
Yeah.
section of the document. If they are going to try to preserve a historic monument or location, they're going to read the historic preservation section of the document. That is why when I started this document, I put in an executive summary, which is definitely in need of refining, but it is meant to direct people to the places they have to go. Yes, the entire document is long, and it will be, and every CPC document, every CPP document is long. And if you can show me one that's not, I'm happy to look at it, but they are all long because they have required pieces. We have to explain how people apply for projects. We have to explain to people what our priorities are. Like you said, nobody's going to read the master plans. It is the point of the CPP to document those things. There are long sections. However, because we did it piecemeal, there is an open space section, there's a recreation section, there is a historic preservation section. There are several different sections, and they are all long sections, and they all have duplicate information that can be pulled out. So ultimately, the master plan, our CPP, will not be as long as all of those documents combined in their current state. They are that way because we did them piecemeal, because that's what the committee agreed to do when we very first started. So if you don't like how long the CPP is, it's going to be shorter if and when it gets pulled together. It's not in its final state. It's nowhere close to its final state, but everybody has worked their tails off to get it to the point where we're ready to kind of glue all the pieces together, refine it, make it look like it came from one voice. And to shorten it, we're going to have appendices in there. I rarely read appendices. Even in my technical documentation, I don't read appendices half the time, but they're there for reference if people want to look at them. We're providing hyperlinks if people want to go out to a website to look at them, that kind of thing. It's all part of putting together a really complex document like this. So that's, I really feel like we've done a lot of work. We have a lot of good information, a lot of good content, and we will have an amazing CPP once we're done, but we're not there yet. And I feel like criticizing what we have now is not fair because it's not anywhere close to a final state. It's not even really in a good first draft form right now.
Okay, all right. Let's get back to what. Yes, Liz.
So briefly, yes, we have to get our CPP done. And we do know it will shrink in size as it gets consolidated down and it gets smoothed and streamlined. And as important as that is, it's very easy. This committee has mentioned it a few times, but we also are very committed to full open access transparency. And part of what that means is translations of those documents, which is going to take some time as well. So it doesn't feel good to rush that document only to know that you put out something that is going to get heavily edited over again. But then what, you don't translate the first one because you know it's not solid enough? Or no, you do the work to get it in the right shape so that when you take it to translation and when you open the door, you are as open to everyone in the community as possible. So we have mentioned translation multiple times on our key documents as something we're going to have to do, but you don't do that until you've got it down to a certain point, which is why we kind of keep harping. I know it feels like that at every meeting, saying the pieces of the CPP have to get done. The consolidation of that document has to get done. That is the foundational piece from which so much else will flow. right? So many other pieces, a separate, easier document for dealing with criteria, which is very detailed in that right now, right? So a lot of the helpful PR type pieces will come out of that, but you can't, I mean, you can try and do rough drafts of that, but you're just putting off every rough draft you do, every shortcut you take is delaying getting the translations done that you're going to need to make this a fair and balanced process for everyone. So I just put that out there because it's easy. We finally added that to our task list for translations of that, because you don't really want to go, to me, you don't want to go out the door without having that, because then you're saying out of the gate, English speaking first. And I don't think that feels good for our community. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Okay, bye.
Okay. All right. Let's getting back with the task at hand right now. That we have to start moving this this committee forward. Okay. Steve made a suggestion about coming up with priorities for the next 2 years in the 4 sections of the act, meaning open space and outdoor recreation, housing, and historic preservation. I think that's reasonable to do. But now I'm going to go back to where are we going to find that information? Is it going to be our opinion, or should it be from the individual boards? In other words, I don't feel that I'm going to have to go to the Housing Authority and ask for their input, even though they've already looked at it. They've reviewed our document. I know they have, because that was my task to Steve Starr, was to get that done. And they did review it. But they never gave me what their top priorities were. And that's what we're looking for. Okay.
So I've put that on the agenda for the Conservation Commission meeting this coming Wednesday.
Which
to
I
do
think
that to do that as well.
Sure. I think that's important. So
Liz has her hand, but I do have a point about the Housing Commission stuff.
yeah, Liz.
So I would say, if you want to do that, then go to the section of the CPP that's been written so far, pull out the opportunities and pull out the criteria and send it to the board and see what they say, how they react, what they bring you back. I think it's an extra cycle versus having them just come to the open forum. But if you're bound and determined that you got to get this step done, then pull it out and send it over.
But as I read the ordinance, that's one of our tasks.
Fine.
Is to get the input from the boards. And it's also it's to set short and long-term goals, which we have the goals in there, which is great. But
so great.
Be,
add the task to a list somewhere, pull it's like a page out of each of the CPP sections, send them off to those boards and say, we'd love to hear your priorities back on this in a week. I'm not sure like why this is rocket science. It's an extra task on our list, but okay, but we have this information. Maybe they have more to add to it in terms of ordering it differently or something, but it's there. This is not a mystery.
So hold on, Shannon. You have Steve. I'll get back to you, Shannon.
No, that's okay.
We asked the Housing Commission for their priorities when we first started. This was maybe even the second meeting that we had, and Steve Starr got it. We didn't get it right away. We had to track it down, but we have that information and it was emailed out to everybody on the commission. So we have their priorities, and going back to them, I mean, if I were to do something like that in my job, if somebody told me something and then I had to go back to them and say, yeah, I know you told me that, but can you tell me again? They would think that I had no idea what I was doing, that I was incompetent, that they were wasting their time talking to me, because why are they going to tell me again? They're just going to have to tell me again. We have that information.
Well, great. So if we have the information, let's whoever has the information, who's the primary holder of the information, distill it down to a page and let's share them back and forth.
Yeah, let's
So
do that for
Judy-
next
All
meeting.
of our documents are background documents that have been posted in all of our meetings. So anybody can pull them down.
Yeah.
And find those pages in them. I mean, that's been around. I mean, it's not.
Okay. Okay, Judy.
I'm just curious, Steve, what you think will happen if we don't do that. Do you think the city council is going to come down on us? Do you think they're going to be unhappy with us, reprimand us? What's going to happen? It sounds like it'll be a crime if we don't get it done.
No, the reason
So
the reason the act wants us to think that way is that it creates the opportunity, as I understand it, to create a rolling 5-year plan over time where you're beginning to identify future opportunities, to anticipate where you might need money in a few years. So for instance, if we were talking about open space and somebody knew that a piece of property might be changing hands some number of years out, and we as a committee wanted to create a reserve fund so we could acquire that, that would be useful information
we
because
understand that, Steve. We understand that can happen. We also understand this is our first year. You renew your plan. So
Yeah.
right now, for us to have to be able to figure out every detail like that, I think it's unreasonable to expect that as the others are saying, we have to go back, even though we have in detail examined their plans and we have people from those committees. So if we don't do it, nothing will happen to us. I think it's more important for us to get this work done. And I was really struck by what Liz said, that if we don't get this done, we don't get it translated, and we are really harming the people who most need the CPA. Those are the people I'm concerned about, not the 5-year plan at this point. We know when I wrote 2 of the plans, I know what we need. It's in there. We know what we need in the future, and it doesn't happen immediately. You can do a short-term project, but there are much longer-term projects, especially in the open space. So we have spent this whole night talking about something you don't think we got done. And I think that, but our plans are too long. We're giving them too much detail. That seems to me to be opposite comments. We're putting too much information out there, but we didn't ask particularly for this. And I doubt that these committees actually know exactly what they want for the 1 year or the 5 year at this point. So, how much time have we spent talking about this now?
I'd say most of the meeting.
Yeah, right.
I would think so. Okay. Shannon, you have your hand up.
Super quick. The Parks and Rec Department does not have a master plan. They gave us their priorities, but they don't have a master plan because they have never had funding for it. One of the things that Jim Snyder has mentioned is he would love to have funding to develop a master plan. So some of these committees, some of these departments that we've gone to haven't had the luxury of having a master plan funded. So they have given us our priorities, and we have worked really hard to establish those priorities with those groups, and they've been documented. So what's being asked here is basically saying all the work we've done so far, yeah, it's nice, but these are these other things we think should be done instead.
No, that's not the case at all. That is really not the case.
I agree.
All I was trying to do was reference what the ordinance says, what our duties are. And if it's in there, fine. But I will tell you, Judy, the open space plan, the master plan, when was the master plan updated? Was it maybe 20? But the only responsibilities of the planning board for that master plan, what their priorities may not have been the same when it was written originally, whether it was written in when I was involved in 2014 and was updated in 17, it may have been updated in 20. Did the priorities change between 14, 17, 20? Who knows? But going back to the planning board to say, you know, this particular parcel that needs to be protected now. Let's say Bethany, for argument's sake, as a parcel. In the master plan, it does say that we need to protect that particular parcel. That's fine. But when? Is it short term or is it long term? So
In which parts of it are most important
Oh
to
my
protect?
God.
yeah, but those are the conversations that need to be had. That's all I'm saying. That and if the Parks and Rec doesn't have a master plan, okay. You've asked for their priorities. Do they know what their number one priority is, or did they give us a list of 10 priorities? Do you know what I mean?
We're back to this question of what the number one priority is. How important is that in our first year when we don't even have funding yet?
Well,
Why are we so stuck on the order of the priorities, Tom? The people are going to apply. We are not going to ask for projects. The departments are. They will apply for what their first priority is. They won't miss out on it if they know what their first priority is.
Right.
So
But
why is
yet-
it so important that we list it in our plan?
because you got to use that as a form of reference.
Why are you so resistant?
In other words,
It's taking too much time, Steve. Now we are behind the 8 ball and you are asking us to go back to all these committees. And I've been to the planning board. I know how hard it is to get on an agenda. We will never finish. That's why I'm so against this.
But
Because we have no
but
time,
I
as you have told us.
I accept that if you've done it already, just pull it out. I'm not insisting you go to the committees.
I'm saying if we haven't done it and we don't have it, we don't have time now as you're pushing us to get this out. And I don't think there'll be terrible repercussions if we don't have this list for them. That's what I'm saying. So how long do you think it takes? The planning board has agendas. You have to get on their agenda. They have to talk about it and then they'll meet again. I went to them 5 times recently for an issue. So I know what it's like when you're trying to get through the planning board and trying to get answers. It takes them time.
Joe should be doing this.
Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
So here's what I'm saying. We have people on a committee who are not doing the work, and I know that Joe has reasons. And that's why I'm saying then we have to get those people off and get them to do the work. You are asking the people who have done the work to do the work of the other committee people.
No, I'm
No.
only talking with the people who showed
But
up
I'm
at the
saying-
meeting.
I'm
Judy.
saying that that's right. He's not here. And that's been the issue. If
Okay.
he had been involved, he would have given me the priorities, but he hasn't been. We cannot do more than we are doing.
Right.
And we do want to get things done. So you have now asked to do something that members of the committee should have done and haven't done. You go to them and ask them to do it then. Or
No,
else, let's
okay,
get them.
My
hold on,
inclination would be
All right.
to ask Joe to ask them.
right. And I will do
He's
that.
not here.
That will
He
be
probably
done.
won't be here. He's missed 6 meetings now. That's not going to happen. And Doug has now said, maybe he's not the right person for the committee. Consider that. That's an at-large position. That's a position that can draw from many people in this community. That's what has to be done if we're going to get through this process.
Are you suggesting, Judy, I should resign?
You said maybe you're the wrong person. If it's up to you,
said-
Doug,
Why I said that is because what is happening to this point doesn't seem to be accomplishing the goals. And as I sit and listen, my strengths are not along the lines of what 3 or 4 of you have been able to do. I think I'm very qualified to do what is necessary at the end or for the end result.
but we
I'm not
need,
qualified
that's
for-
not good enough, Doug. We need
Well,
people who can
okay,
do the
hold on,
work
hold on.
now.
You're
Okay,
not the
all right,
first-
all right, all right. Let's get back on track here, please. Okay. Shannon, you have your hand up?
Sorry about that. I didn't take it down.
Okay. Anyway, Steve, your hand's up.
So I want to go back to the calendar. So I'm hearing that we're nowhere close to being able to follow this timeline that I had proposed. So, so what timeline can we do? And let me just make some assumptions here in talking about this, just based on what I've seen looking at other communities' process. Most communities allow 3 months or so for the application development process, because it takes a long time to originate projects. You have to find co-funders. That's one of your criteria. You got to bring the whole thing together. So assuming that there's this 3-month period where people are going to be pulling their applications together, probably in our first year, that's going to be more difficult than in other years, because nobody's familiar with the program, because they haven't heard anything about it since we voted in November of 2020. So given that, if we can't initiate this process in some fashion with technical assistance, as the city council and the ordinance have asked us to do, are we saying that we're not going to have a project round in this next year, that we're going to go a whole other year? Because from a timing point of view, one of the goals has always been that our selection timetable is integrated with the city budgeting timetable for capital projects. So if we don't make the April timeline for getting information to the council won't have time to make their decisions, and we won't be in line with the budget cycle, which means we could potentially go to the next year as our first year. But if we're not going to do anything this year, let's make a firm decision that we're not going to do anything this year, and then set up some intermediary deadlines for ourselves, and try to stick to them. But in my experience, working as a project manager in a lot of different settings, it's really difficult to get things done if we don't have hard deadlines to work with. Whatever those deadlines are, let's pick them ourselves and go for it. If our most important product for this year is going to be to create a plan document, let's just focus on that for the year and not worry about the application process.
Shannon, you have a question, comment?
We have the foundational documentation and research and artifacts to get to a June date to accept project applications and get them to City Council. That process is predefined. We don't have to define that. All we have to do is the work to get there. And we have talked about deadlines. We do have documentation. We do have I'm going to point back to that calendar. Last meeting, when we actually all met, we said, these are the dates by which we want to do the things that we need to do to get to accepting an application. Like getting to, I'm going to pull up the calendar right now, like getting to the public forum. We know in order to get to the public forum, we've got to have that CPC in a place where they can read it and provide feedback. That includes getting it into translation. That includes getting out into the communities to let them see us and let them read that CPC. And I'm going back to, we're not asking them to read everything. They're going to read the stuff that's important to them. But we need to do that. This is not as easy as just going back and getting the priorities of the committees. And I am simplifying everything for a reason. We have talked about when we want to get this pre-qualification deadline, because the committee agreed there should be a pre-qualification form. So
Yeah.
a lot of work has been done on putting together a pre-qualification form. So
Yeah.
we said that that deadline would be around August. We actually talked about all of the dates, all of when we want to get this stuff done. And on the calendar that we put together, we said that we wouldn't be able to get to actually looking at projects, not even getting them to city council, but looking at projects to assess them until November and December. And that puts us into January 23 before we get projects in front of city council. Now, if the expectation is that we back that up into June, well, we've got a whopping 2 months to do all of that work. That is a boatload of work. And if you want that done, you need 9 members of the committee who will put their nose to the grindstone and do the work. And you know already that the valuable people, the really, not, I shouldn't say valuable people.
The valuable
people who have-
people.
No, the people who have done, and the people who will always put their nose to the grindstone and do the work are really done. And this entire hour and 50 minutes at this point has really just reinforced why we're done. And if you want to get to those dates, if you want to achieve those goals, if you want to set deadlines, great, we've already done that. But sure, waste more time and set more deadlines and set more expectations that nobody on the committee is going to meet. So that's my piece. That's what I want to say. We've set the deadlines. We have a list of priorities. It's just that nobody pays attention to them. Nobody reads them. And if for some reason you think they're going to read what you put together, well, that reinforces why I am choosing not to contribute to that anymore.
So since you keep saying you, I assume you're speaking to me. So I'm a little torn because I've stepped into this. I'm someone who does not work. I have a lot of time to contribute. I'm willing to work with other people's material. To Liz's observation, I don't want to take over. I just want to work. And I'm even suggesting specific things I could do. And the feedback I'm getting is that somehow I'm at fault for offering to do it. So I'm really willing to back away from that and say, if there's too much work to do in May and June, and there's no one who wants to do it, then we're not going to make that June deadline. You just, at some point in time, you have to accept that you're not going to get there. We can't have it both ways. Either we're going to work towards it, or we're going to set a later deadline and give up on getting this out there this summer. What are the alternatives?
Doug,
Tom, and to follow up on what you just said, Steve, if that's the situation, and because the city council is the one that authorized this and pushed it into a vote and appointed 4 of the members of the committee and is in charge of this, we better have a meeting with them pretty quickly if we don't think we're going to be able to deliver on what they asked us to deliver by the 1st of July. You better be getting before them pretty quickly to explain to them what the situation is.
And the mayor.
And the mayor.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I am going to interject, and I don't usually try to, but I do want to say that according to the ordinance, we can only submit projects by, so it is by February, but if I think that when we looked at that calendar, we backed up from a February date because that's what's in the ordinance.
No
Correct.
later than February 1.
Correct. But it does, it gives us an out if there's emergency projects that says that we can bring it at other times during the year by a 2/3 vote of the committee. But that's not the May 1st or the February 1st deadline is what's noted. That other piece is within that same section in the ordinance.
And
Yet,
I would suggest, if we are feeling the way we're feeling, we should be updating the city council this month and tell them where we are and what we intend to do. I see Phil is perhaps on the call, so maybe he knows where we are, but I think we should do that.
I think maybe you're
Do a
right.
presentation on what we've accomplished.
Yes, Phil.
Yeah, I was just listening for my own, so I could.
Oh, there
learn a
he
few
is.
things. No, I'm listening. I'm just sitting at my kitchen table, but I was on mute and I blanked myself out. But no, that we'd love to have you come in front and give us an update. You know what I mean? We're pretty accommodating. If you want to get on the agenda, we can get you on the agenda.
I can't
and
hear him.
from,
Can anyone hear him?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Yep.
I'm not muted. Can you? Nobody ever said I talk soft. That's for sure. All I said was, if Chairman Mahoney or anybody wanted to come in front of us and let us know where you folks are at, we'd be happy to hear where you're at and know what's going on. It'd be great.
Okay,
And
let's,
our agendas, we do our agendas on Thursday for the following Tuesday. We're meeting this week and we're meeting again the following week because with the budget, the mayor, the first time city council's ever gotten the budget early, and we're actually going to start tackling it early. So it's a good thing. And we have a great working relationship with the mayor, the whole city council does. So whatever we can do to help you folks, we're happy to help. And, this committee is important. It's important to the city of Framingham. It's important to all of us that supported it. And I think all the councils actually did support it. We donated, we had signs on our lawns, and this is a good thing for Framingham. So we want to see this get moving. So whatever I can do to help facilitate, I'm here. I'm a phone call away. So I'm just going to keep listening, but I just figured I'd throw that out there if you folks want to come in front of us. And that's where we're at. Thank you.
well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I will be in touch with you. So, yes, Liz.
Hi, Phil. He's my counselor. So we actually, as a
Fellow Rotarians, we're fellow Rotarians.
right, the inside track.
Yep.
So as a committee, we actually did discuss getting to city council and giving them an update. And that was probably 6 months ago. We were trying to make a plan for 3 months after that to be in front of city council to tell them we wanted to be able to say we were at about 80% of our CPP and that we were getting to a very solid application draft and that we were looking forward to booking our forum. We wanted to have a very short, brief update and that but we didn't get to the point where we had our ducks in a row that we felt we could use city council's time just to say, yeah, we're busy working. So we did think about that. We did talk about that as a committee, but we never made it to that point, right? And then we've been really focused on trying, really, I think we've been a little bit more worried about the public forum to get our ducks in a row to have that because we really want that feedback. I know there's several people on the committee who are very interested in project management that do like having what you're describing, Steve, having a list, having deadlines, understanding how the pieces dovetail together to achieve that final end. We did that early on and we blocked stuff out. Didn't exactly go as we wanted. So we had one attack at that. Then we tried again. We birthed the calendar, and in the calendar, we actually mapped out all of our key milestones to hit what we thought would work. And probably within, I don't know what, Tom, like 2 or 3 meetings, we realized, oops, that schedule we mapped out wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Based on how much time it was taking us for the pieces or other things we suddenly realized we needed to slot in that we hadn't thought of. So we sort of had started with that kind of project plan. And then what's happened is as we realize what we are not getting done, we stopped trying to achieve a final date and we started focusing with laser intensity on the like next 3 key pieces that have to get done before you can even attempt to have that deadline of, you know, where we wanted to be. So I don't think there's anybody that objects to project planning or timelines or any of that. It's just that our history of hitting them and, you know, keeping ourselves accountable to it, you know, hasn't been that great. And we've come to understand, you know, working with the coalition, that it is a big mountain to climb. There are a lot of pieces to the process and the procedures. And I know some of the members don't agree with that, but we are trying to build something that in 5 years from now, it'll be like, whoever had a question how you did it, it's going to be like so completely obvious. It's not obvious if you don't pave the road well to begin with. And so I'm a process gal. I love deadlines, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I like rolling out something that makes that track for the person wandering in, makes it really intuitive for them. So it's not like we object to that kind of approach. It's just we've given up trying to stuff it into a specific deadline now. And we've gotten it back down to the pieces because we haven't been great at delivering our pieces yet. You know, we're getting a little bit better, but that's why why you're seeing us say like, oh, well, we're not quite sure, because we've done multiple rounds of trying to make a full, complete master schedule. And now we're doing it again, which is not an exercise in futility. You still have to have that final end goal of when are we open for business? You know, when are we opening the doors and taking those applications in, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal. But backing that up and getting all those pieces done, you're kind of exactly where we were 6 months ago, trying to make that work.
Okay. Shannon had her hand up, then I'll go to you, Judy. By the way, committee members, it's now after 9 o'clock. We need
Right.
to
I
extend our
move that
meeting
we
time.
continue to 9:30.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Judy,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Fred. You're muted, Fred.
Yes,
Okay, and Tom, yes. 9:30, that's when we cut off because that's when the recording goes too.
You didn't ask me.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Doug.
Okay, yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all. Okay, Shannon.
Yeah, so like a little bit of what Liz said, project planning, fantastic. Oh my gosh, if you give us a project plan, that would be unbelievably wonderful. But again, we haven't hit any of the dates that we have set. And I know like Liz and Judy and I are not the project managers of this. Everybody is accountable. We're a team, we're a committee, we should work together. Now the leadership of the committee have specific roles. Like I am in charge of the finance stuff and Liz is in charge of the clerk stuff and Tom and Judy are the chair and vice chair and kind of run the meetings. But we all work together, and that's been the biggest challenge of this committee, is working together to meet the mutual goals. All of us are trying to achieve the same thing, but getting to approve projects in June or in 2050 or whatever date you pick, that's fantastic, but you still have to meet the expectations and the rules of the CPA law and of the ordinance. So those are the challenges that we've had, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, so I'm going to stop there. I just want to say that we are really, we've tried really hard to do anything close to a project plan and to meet deadlines, and consistently haven't met them. And a lot of folks here are just exhausted from having this same conversation over and over again.
Understood. Yes, Judy.
Yes, Liz, what Liz said was very useful. One of the things that I think you should know is there's a lot that was done that isn't visible. Like we had to deal with the tax abatement. The tax bill came out. The statement wasn't a good one. We worked on that. That delayed us. So there were many things that would come up. We have a website. We have a wonderful logo, which I think is going to really help us. But one of the things that I've been concerned about is getting an administrator, getting somebody to help us. If we want to move things along, that would be a real step forward. So I don't know where that is, but that again took more of our time and set us back. So I'd like to know what the hope is that we can get an administrator who can help us with some of this work, because the work is right now being done by a lot of volunteers. So that's what I have to say.
Correct. And just to respond to that, I've had conversations with the COO, and he took our job description and he was going to work with HR. Obviously, the new HR director is she's also was reviewing it also, but so I have to get back to Mr. Tassino to find out where we are. But he wanted to wait until the new Planning and Economic Development Director came on board so he could discuss it with them too. So which that gentleman started today, as a matter of fact. And I think he'll be having come from Wayland, who already has the CPA. I think he's got some insight that might help us with that position. My hope is still to get this. I know this is a long task, but my hope is to get this person on board at the first of the fiscal year, hopefully sometime in July. But so that's where that position remains. So Shannon, you have your hand up.
Yes. So as I recall, at our last meeting, we still hadn't approved a job description that satisfied the committee. So I'm curious how this got to the COO and HR director if we haven't approved it.
No, it's not in for it's. They were going to help write it and adjust it accordingly. It was not for submission for approval. It's coming back for our approval. But I wanted to. I mean, he's well versed in hiring and everything else. And at the time, he was the acting HR director. So.
And it makes sense that they would help refine the job description, but we definitely hadn't finished working through our requirements and our questions and concerns.
Understood. It's
so
coming back to us.
But that should happen before it goes to somebody like a COO. They shouldn't be looking at a half-baked job description when we haven't ironed everything out.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Steve.
So I'd like to get us back to this whole question of what we're going to try to get done. So I still believe we can have public forums and have a plan together by the end of June that incorporates the feedback we get from the public. And I'm willing to volunteer to pull together all the pieces that everybody's done and distill them into a document that everyone can review. Can you send it to me? Or is that something we don't want to get done? I mean, I'm hearing two things. There aren't enough people to do the work. I'm offering to try to do the work.
So it has been sent to the entire committee and we have discussed it ad nauseum and we haven't gotten to a finished place. So you can rework it, but it's still going to come back to the committee and we're still going to have feedback. The point being is we haven't gotten to a place where everybody's like pretty cool with like the good enough. I personally am never in favor of going for the perfect when the good enough is going to get us there. And doing a rewrite of the job description is just rework. And I don't know that we need to get there to do a whole rewrite of the job description, because Tom has done a lot of work on the job
I'm
description.
not talking about
but
the
we
job
have-
description, Shannon. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about the plan.
The CPP.
Oh, okay, rewriting the work that everybody's done on the CPP, got it.
Oh, integrating the work that everybody's done.
Okay. Yes,
I'm
Judy.
I'm volunteering to do that.
I thought that Shannon had already done it. She put the CPP together. It's one document now. So now the question is, if we're going to refine it, as we've been saying, it could be a lot shorter. I've got 2 of the sections, and by the next meeting, I plan to have those completely finished.
Don't write
someone has
anymore.
to-
Stop writing.
No, I'm talking about cutting it. So now,
Don't even bother.
Steve.
Just give it to me as it is, Judy.
Steve, you have it. It's been out there
No,
in the
it's-
No,
ether.
I don't
It's
have
not-
it. I'm not a member of the committee. I haven't
You are
been working
now.
on this.
You are on the committee, Steve. Do you want us to
Yes.
deliver it to you?
Yes,
Judy,
But
the only thing that the committee has is a PDF of the document. What Steve was asking for is the
Word.
base
I need
document, the Word
versions
version.
of all the pieces.
so give him the Word version. Where's the problem here?
I'm asking you
Wait
to
a-
send
wait a
me
second.
yours.
Why
not
is Steve doing it better than me doing it?
She's already done it. Yeah.
I've already done it. I've already done all the work.
Right.
I'm just waiting for Judy to send me what she's got, and then I can pare it all down, because there, like I said, there's a lot of duplication.
Oh,
Why is it-
you folks are really driving me crazy. I have to say that. On
I
one
have to under-
hand,
Hold
on
on,
one hand, and again,
Shannon.
I'm the
Hold
new,
on,
I'm the
hold
new,
on,
I'm the
please.
new guy in,
please.
I'm the
Hold
new
on.
guy in the committee, and I want to speak frankly. On one hand, I'm being told that we're not ready to go. And then on the other hand, I'm told it's all done and there's no reason to do any more. So which is it?
I would like to respond to that, since I put the document together. So I have been integrating
Put it together.
everybody's pieces of the document have been drafted. And if you were listening earlier in the conversation, I said that it is in a state that is barely a first draft, but it really takes some refinement to get there. It is a huge document right now. The point is to pare it down so it's not as huge, and I need to do the work on that. Judy said that she would like to pare a few pieces down, but what you are proposing sounds a lot like, hey, I'm going to take all the work that you did and rewrite it.
Well, it sounds like you've taken all the work that everybody else has done and integrated it. All I'm
Exactly.
saying is, I'm hearing that the women are claiming that they're doing all the work. And I am offering, because everyone else is busier than me, to take what you've done, get it in a Word form, what you describe as basically a first draft, and get it to a near final draft.
Which is
And
what
you're
I've
telling
been
me
doing.
you don't want me to do it because you own it.
That's kind of what doing project management stuff is, taking a task, owning it, and taking it to completion. And that's what I'm working on.
Okay.
That is one piece of what we've been working on, and it is not the problem. There are other problems that we've been discussing, but getting the CPP to a final state is not one of them.
Steve, why don't you take on some of the projects that aren't done? One would be to see through this process of hiring somebody. Another would be to go after those priorities that you wanted. Go to each of the committees and find out what the priorities are.
Because that's not the way this works, Judy. It's not that I go to my committee, the Conservation Commission, I'm on the agenda for Wednesday, and I ask them for their priorities. Fred goes to his committee, and he's done that already, so he doesn't need to go back. If Shannon wants to keep that task, that's fine with me. Then we go back to the question of what's the calendar we're trying to meet. And if we aren't going to meet the summer deadline, let's decide not to meet it.
And we have done that with the calendar that we did last.
So I think then when we meet with the city council, we should tell them that we are not going to have project recommendations for February of this year.
Right. Okay. Liz, you had a comment?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really good about you, Steve, is that you do have such a deep background from the study group and you are so passionate about CPA. And with that in mind, I've been a little worried about the public forum that we put it on, that we're going to need a task for a presentation. And, you know, that's always been put on the back burner because we're focused on the documents that we need for that. But we really have not, I don't believe this is on anybody's plate right now to like come up with that compelling slide deck that is the more accessible, exciting parts of what this is going to be, and kind of putting up those items and getting feedback, right? So there's been no work done towards that keystone moment where we have to be in front of the public, whether it's Zoom or in a meeting. And I just think, you know, that would be awesome if you could create the first like presentation that bring it back to the committee, and we'd probably all go fab, because we have no bandwidth to write that, but we know it's going to be critical. We know it's going to be really important. And it's one of our first moments of stepping out in the public, you know, so yes, we have to have our foundational documents, and many of us are obsessing about that, but I've been really worried about that presentation. I mean, I just don't think it's 4 or 5 of us getting up on a stage and going, it's going to be great. I mean, I've always thought not only is it a presentation and questions, but maybe there's a short info card or something that you give out to people to take away, but we've done nothing on it, 0. And that's a key thing that we are supposed to do before July 1. And I've been really worried about that because you are so familiar with its history of how we got here and what it can do for us. I think it would be awesome if you would work on that. But like everything on the committee, you have to feel that's a piece that you want to do, right? I mean, Tom's always looking for somebody to volunteer to take a piece of something. That one's on our list, but nobody said, yeah, right, let me have that, right? So that just struck me.
So I've got that on my list too. Develop a presentation. It's the first item in June, but in order to do that, we need to have the plan, because that's what we're going to have to present.
I mean, you kind of have to write that with the expectation that we would not have a forum unless we have the plan. So, you know, we're going to have something for the plan, right?
I'm not hearing that we're going to have the plan. And to tell you the truth, there's no point in my spending time developing a presentation unless we're going to commit to dates for the plan.
Okay, it was just an idea. I mean, sooner or later, we have to stand up in front of the city and explain what CPA is and kind of how it's going to work. And we know a lot of that, but
Yeah.
if it's not your bag, it's not your bag. But
I've done it many times.
Just a thought. I think you'd be really good at it, but you know, you have to, like everything in the committee, somebody has to volunteer to do it and bring it back for the committee to vet before it, you know, we're ready for it. So just a thought.
Yeah. Shannon, you had a comment?
Yeah, I never said we wouldn't have the plan. I never said that. I said it's in a draft form. It needs work. I need Judy's section to complete the open space and recreation because she wants to do a little tweaking to it. We have not set a date for the plan, so it is not done. If we have a date, if you tell me you want that plan at 8:15 tomorrow morning, I will work through the night and get it done, and you will have it. We have not done that, so the plan is not done. I work on it when I have some time. I do have a full-time job. That is not an excuse, but that is context. So I am trying to do work. I am also on many other boards. So I am dedicated to this. It's a fantastic committee. The CPA is amazing and will do amazing things, and I will get there, but we all need to be committed to it. We all need to put in the work. We all need to meet the dates. So if the committee agrees that they want the plan by a certain date, tell me and you will have it. I have never missed a deadline. If somebody tells me what the deadline is, I will make it.
Okay. All right. I know we're slowly running out of time here. We still have a couple of items that the big item that we have left that we haven't discussed now is the in-person / hybrid meetings. Okay. I know some members don't feel comfortable enough to go into City Hall for a in-person meeting, and that's okay. Okay. But I think face-to-face meetings are really important to get. There's one thing that you can commit to if you're just looking at a screen, or not commit to, but it's a lot different if you're actually sitting face-to-face to the person. So that's my 2 cents. So I guess I'd like to hear from other members, and we will take a vote next week for it. Shannon, your hand is up. Is it relative to this particular?
It wasn't, but
Discussion.
it is now. So sorry, I will try to remember to put it down. So I monitor the COVID numbers, and at this point, if we are not required to be in person, which we are not by state law required to be in person yet, I'm not comfortable being in a setting like that. Now, if the COVID numbers take a turn, absolutely, I would be there in person. But I think we need to not be stuck on having to be in person. I work remotely. Productivity absolutely does not suffer because of being online. And if it does, it really needs to be addressed with priorities, and it just, there are ways to work around it. So we can work with that, absolutely. But right now, with the COVID numbers where they are, and with the new variants kind of starting to take a hold, I'm not okay with being in person. If that changes tomorrow, my take on that will change.
Okay. Liz.
So I have had the 4th shot, so I am boosted. So you would think I'd be like fine going in. I am not. And just so folks know, the web work for our team is being done by Renan. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm bad with that. But Renan, actually, there was a little delay in me chit-chatting with him the other day, and it turns out Renan ended up with COVID, and a bad case of it. Not asymptomatic, not trivial. And, you know, he was working at City Hall and he got it. Now, did he get it from City Hall? I don't know. But I mean, it shows you it's not necessarily gone. So even though I have 4th shot, I am not keen to meet in person. Like Shannon, I also work remote. I'm at a company that's global, and they've worked remote for years. I know it's not the norm for city and town bureaucracies. And I know I certainly would love to see people in person, but I'm not even doing that in my personal life yet. So I don't feel comfortable yet coming in for something like this. I mean, we're really exchanging documents and doing work like that, and I don't see the need to necessarily do it in person. So I'm still a no, wish I wasn't, but this is the times we live in.
Okay, Doug.
Well, I was the one who originally pushed for this, and I still think it's a good idea for those who wish to be in the room, not make it mandatory. I just was on a meeting with the Agricultural Commission, and they voted unanimously to have in-person meetings starting with our next meeting. I think it's up to the individuals. If the ladies don't want to show up, that's nothing wrong with that. I just think that, as you suggested earlier, and we've talked about this before, it's much more is accomplished by looking at someone across the table from you, watching body language, listening to new. So I'm in favor of doing it for as many people who want to do it.
Yeah. Phil.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you know, I understand how the people that feel about going to City Hall. There was an outbreak at City Hall. You know, the COO was out. There's been an outbreak. I had a choice. You know, I wanted to be chair of the city council, So you can't be the chair and be remote if 8 or 9 of the members are there. And Judy was a city councilor, so she knows. But the city council is different, and we don't have a lot of people in the room. We can wear masks if we want, but my wife's an ICU nurse at Brigham and Women's. This thing is still a situation and a problem. It really is. And some people, I'm like Liz, I went and got my 4th shot. I got my booster before we went to Aruba just to be safe. And I took my 87, it was 87 today, my father, and he got his Moderna, his booster, his 2nd booster, just because you can't be cautious enough. But, City Hall had some issues. She's spot on about Renard. There was some people, a couple other different offices had issues. And, Mutual One closed down their Lincoln Street branch for a week. They had an outbreak there. They only had 4 people working there, but how was a bank closed down a whole branch? He closed it down almost for a week. Today's the first day they opened up again on the Lincoln Street branch. And, that's where I do business, but it just, there's still a big concern out there. And, it's people's choice. And that's what it comes down to. So I just wanted to reiterate, there were some issues at City Hall. That's why the mayor came out with that informational about masks. He didn't do a mandate, but he came out with the informational. And it's a concern. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let you folks know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy?
I feel the way Liz does. I think a hybrid is a good idea, but I personally would not want to come to the meetings yet. But also, when I served on the city council for 2 years, I did not see a big advantage to being there. I think we do really well with our Zoom. It's more efficient. You can have your own desk with all your materials here. And I just don't see the benefit to it. I also don't like driving to City Hall, trying to park it at nighttime and leaving at nighttime. I find that really uncomfortable for me. Generally, my husband would come with me because of that. So to me, doing it from home makes much more sense.
Okay. Fred?
Okay, I much prefer in-person meetings. I think that across the table contact really is completely different from the little screen in my office here. Having said that, I'm fully vaccinated. I'm doubly boosted. But nevertheless, I am in a high risk group. And so I personally, at the present time, would opt for a virtual meeting.
Okay. And Steve?
Well, so I'm hearing what everybody's saying, and I mean, I would certainly favor hybrid meetings in principle. I think that individuals have to make decisions about how they feel safe, but given the number of people who aren't comfortable coming in at this point, there's no point in having an in-person meeting because there really aren't going to be enough people there to justify it.
Yeah,
so I would say that in the near term, we should continue as we're doing. There's no point in 2 people getting together and having a meeting and everyone else being in Zoom. That makes no sense at all.
Correct.
But I think we should agree that this is something we revisit periodically.
I agree with
feel
you.
more comfortable.
I agree with you.
Yep.
Okay. It's 9:27 right now. We've got essentially 3 minutes. The last item is the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I do find an error in the minutes, Tom.
Okay.
It says add to the April 11th agenda. It should have been the April 25th agenda. And that's twice the minutes to do list. That was the meeting was on the 11th. And we were going to add to the next meeting, which was the 25th, but she put add to the April 11th meeting. So it should be changed to the 25th in 2 places.
Okay. So is that a motion to approve
That's
as amended?
As amended. So, yeah, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that's a roll call vote. Shannon?
Yes.
Liz, Judy?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Steve?
I abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay. Fred?
Yes.
Doug,
Yes,
and Tom, yes. Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I've got another item.
Okay,
My
So,
battery is low, Tom. Why? I think it.
1 second. Yes,
so
Steve, real quick.
what's our agenda for next week?
we're meeting a week from tonight, right?
Correct. Correct. We're gonna, I'd like to see a list of priorities.
And this would be usually when we'd whip up the calendar and look at the realities
Understood.
in front of us,
So,
right?
Understood,
I-
understood. That will be one of the items on the agenda will be, we'll talk about the priorities of each one of the elements. Okay?
So let me ask a question. Are you doing away with all the work we've done on the calendar, or are you leveraging that for that discussion?
No,
because
just, no. That's,
Because everything on that list is on the calendar, and the calendar helps us plan out the date.
yes, that the calendar will be an item on the agenda also, but I just wanted to put the priorities together so that everyone can see what the priorities are. Steve?
So earlier I heard Shannon in good faith volunteer to move the plan along more quickly. And I wonder whether you could have a draft for us to look at and talk about at the next meeting,
Second draft?
the second draft.
Yes, and I didn't agree to move it along. I agreed if you give me a date, I will meet it. So if you want a second draft at the next meeting, I will meet that on the 9th
Okay.
of May.
The 7th, the 9th. So
The 9th,
could we
the
have
9th.
it, could we have it before the meeting so we could review it?
It will be included in the background materials like we do for every meeting.
Great,
Yep.
thank you. That'd be helpful.
Okay, so we got to go. So this is a motion to adjourn. Do I hear one?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Fred, second by Fred. Roll call vote. Shannon,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Judy. You're muted, Judy.
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
and Tom, yes. Thank you all. I know it was a long meeting, but thank you for all your input. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.